Yeah, this is a presentation on sampling. You'll probably know a lot of it, so forgive me if I go over things that you've already got. Good. Yeah, the sampler, as it says there, was devised in the early 20th century. The original patents for it were as early as 1906, contrary to the belief that the Chamberlain was the first one, and they were made using discs or cylinders similar to record players, and I think the cylinders used pistons or something. I might have just made that up, I'm not sure. The first kind of fully functional sampler was actually the laugh box, which was used in the early sitcoms and comedies, and it was made in a very similar way to the Chamberlain, just a keyboard. I think from the images it was about that big, quite a huge thing, and no one knew what was in it up until the late 70s or 80s because it was quite a family secret, but up until the 80s it was the only laughs you'd really hear in sitcoms. After that, it was the Chamberlain, built on a very similar method. As mentioned, 1 second. And then, obviously, as everyone knows, it was borrowed by Pragmatic Limited to create the Mellotron, which worked with the playheads, playing the tapes, generally about 8 seconds long. Obviously the pros made some quite cool sounds and you could load it all up with whatever you wanted. Cottons, it took quite a while to load and was very expensive. The first hit song that everyone knows is Tomorrow Never Knows by the Beatles, but the first kind of number one really it was used on was Baby Can It Be True by Graham Bond. Probably should have got a sample up of that, but I haven't, so I apologise for that. A brief history. We've got the EMS Musis, the Sinclair, the Fairlight CMI, which had a touchscreen and 28 megabytes of memory, quite different to what we know now with huge memory banks. And then there was quite a few in between, but the biggest jumps in usability design was the Akai S1000, which was very popular in drum and bass and jungle because of the time stretching and the CD quality used on it. Again, the memory wasn't huge on it and you had to pay quite a lot to get an update, which was vaguely annoying. You've got the update in 1990, which had the hard disk recording and the SMPTE reader, among other connecting things, so it was just a bit of an upgrade, and then obviously you got the memory. On that, there are obviously compute ones, but we'll get to that a little bit later. A couple of famous samples were the Arm Break and the Funky Drummer. I will see if I can load that one up. Awesome. And you'll recognise something. And I'm really sorry, I really should have put that up. So that's the normal one at the moment. This would be the drum and bass jungle one that you will all have heard in multiple tracks. And this is the slower version that, if I'm not wrong, was at the start Straight Outta Compton. So that's the Arm Break, and that was awesome. And that was a solo performed by G.C. Coleman in the track Amen Brother by the Winstons. Quite a cool little loop, and that was the first one. Yep. The Funky Drummer was from a James Brown song and was another sample that's really popular in a lot of dance music. Why aren't you moving on?
Down.
There we go. Various methods of sampling. We've got using the turntables. Now, I'm not very well versed in turntables, but from what I've gathered, you have your vinyl, and it will have your drum break or your vocal break. This can be sped up or slowed down using the pitch speed button, and you just mix it into another song or use it on its own to get the effects, and that was what a lot of DJs in the late 80s, early 90s used. You've obviously got your hardware samplers like the Akai S1000. Unfortunately, I couldn't find a huge amount of information on that, but it's generally like a lot of the computer samples with a lot more work. And then you've got your computer samplers like Contact, the XS, and certain things like that. Yep. Okay. We've got D&B, which is quite sample heavy, especially early on. Influenced by African Caribbean music such as dub, dancehall, various things like that. They like to use a lot of rock and funk drumming samples to get the real fast, complicated breaks that they could chop up. And the TR-808 kick sample was very popular at the time because it could be pitched down quite nicely and elongated to get some really cool kind of things. Notable producers who used the samplers: Rob Playford, he did Goldie's album Timeless, and then he would say he completely wrote it for him, because Goldie was actually just a decent DJ. And he went up from the S950 to the S1000 and so on. That's a Sound on Sound article that's quite easy to find. A couple of other breaks that were used in this would have been things like the Apache. We've got some nice ones. It seems to be quite popular to use a lot of film samples as well, so play you a few tunes. And Cryptic Minds, this uses Morpheus's sample from the Matrix. Here we are.
I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Been affected quite heavily as well, messed about with, but it still has the essence of the original track, which seems to be quite important. Keep it slightly recognisable. That's all that there is to that one. So then next up we've got done that, excellent. Quite another famous one, you would have all heard it, the Prodigy, Poison, and that's using the Amen break as well. I think some of the most sampled breaks of all time. Very slowed down, in contrast to a lot of Prodigy's stuff, which is quite fast, even their earlier stuff like Out of Space. There we are, Liam Howlett, production genius. And then Dillinger, Angels Fell, which, if I'm correct, is a sample from Blade Runner. And one of the main baddies does this little bit, but I haven't actually seen Blade Runner, so I can't really comment. Just in case you missed it. Just that kind of one line. So yeah, a lot of the time sampling was just as simpling as one line that they create the track around, which sounded quite cool sometimes. This would be a basic method of changing the speed of samples. If you remember, Arcus showed us this in Logic, so forgive me if I've got it slightly wrong. It's in the Logic, so you'd find the sample, right click the trim to next transient, go into the sample editor, click time and pitch machine, and change the mode to classic. I don't remember why, but I think it was because it messed about with the samples too much if you had it on free. Then you'd speed it up or slow it down just to achieve the approximate tempo. Generally it's best to go up by half an octave or an octave. Click that button there, which is the transient marker button, and get rid of the rogue transients that you'll get just from a hi-hat hit you don't want on there. Delete them. Go to flex time, rhythmic, and you can see from the rest there, it's quite a simple method when written out like this. I've got a couple of examples of my own. Forgive me, I was never very good at this one, so they're slightly rushed. And the original loop seems to not be working. It's a full Out Boy tune, because it seems to be interesting to work with. Sped up to 175, and simple as that. Went through that method, although it's not cut very well. It does the same job, just gets it to the tempo, fits in with the metronome. I'm not completely sure what the stylistic content was on the brief, but I'm assuming it's something to do with how they looked. So I was going to comment on the fact that a lot of the hardware samplers and even the computer samplers, they look quite mechanical, fitting in with the kind of drum and bass, jungle, synthesized instruments and the messed up synths, keeping it quite mechanical with that Matrix sample. I think they're called cybergoths or something, but all very based around like metally effects. But that's just a guess, and that's basically all I've got. So thanks.